So I just went into a Discord server I sometimes hang out at, and they were talking about the portrait of Dorian Gray and about how, there was supposedly some earlier versions of the book that were more openly homosexual, and just they were heavily edited so that the versions we have today are largely, have those elements removed. And the people in the server were like, yeah, well, when it was published, it was 1890 or something, and, everything was still controlled by the church, so of course it was censored. And when I read that, something in my brain kind of went, hang on, that doesn't sound quite right. And because in my head, the assumption is, you're a Christian, therefore you must be a homophobe. And when really the homophobia that would have been common back in the 1800s was not necessarily a byproduct of Christianity. And I say this because Christianity and post-Christian nations are not the only places where you can find homophobia. You can find homophobia in a lot of different countries and cultures that had very little, if any, contact with Christianity, in fact. And so when people say that, I sort of feel like, should I point out that not all Christians are homophobes, that some gay people are actually Christians, or some Christians are actually gay? Should I point out that, actually if somebody was reading the Bible carefully, they would know that homophobia and Christianity really shouldn't go hand in hand in the first place, that they should actually be different things? But then I think, well, now hang on. Even if I was handed a manuscript today, even if I was a publisher, I am a Christian, I was running a publishing house, and, somebody submitted to me a book today that seemed to be, glamorizing and promoting the gay lifestyle, how would I react? Would I tell, like, you know what I mean? What would I do? Like, what would the non-homophobic, yet internally consistent thing for me to do be? Because if I just say to them, I'm sorry, I can't publish this, I can't promote this lifestyle because it doesn't fit with what I believe in, am I at that point being homophobic, or am I simply standing my ground on my own values? And, supposing in theory I were to go ahead and be like, yeah, let's publish it as is, let's not change a thing, what people do with their own lives, it's none of my business. Would I not feel at that point like I've kind of, like, the fact that it is my publishing house, wouldn't that make me feel like I am actually complicit then? But then I think, well, now hang on, people don't become gay by reading a book on homosexuality any more than people become straight by reading a book about being straight. So in fact, it would make no difference whether I published it as it was or not. It would ultimately mean the same thing. It's just that people might look at it and think that I'm saying that people should actively pursue an active gay lifestyle, which is not really what I would be thinking. What I would be thinking is that, that whether you're gay or not, if you're not a Christian, you're probably condemned. If you are a Christian, whether you're gay or not, you're probably saved. Therefore, you know what I mean? If you are pursuing Christ and following the Bible as well as you understand it, then, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it is to be gay, so I don't feel qualified to make a statement on what the right thing to do is if you are gay. If you are a Christian, I think that, you've got a responsibility to read the Bible and really think about the content and what it means. But if you're, you know what I mean? If you're straight, you can't speak about being gay with any kind of, qualification. Well, as I mentioned in another video, I'm not necessarily 100% straight. I'm probably more like 99.9% straight. Okay, maybe 95%. But the point is, I don't know what it is like to want to be with someone of the same sex and to not be able to be with someone of the same sex. Like, to have people guilting me over it incessantly. Um, I think I get a little bit of a glimpse in terms of how guilty some people have tried to make me feel over just feeling attracted to the opposite gender. Never mind the same one. Just even some people will stack on the guilt about that, and that has had a deleterious effect on me. So, I feel like it's not right for me to say that, but then at the same time, if I just reply to that message on the server and say, oh, well, but not all Christians are homophobes, like, that's beside the point, because back in 1890, the vast majority would have been homophobes. But then the fact that there are Christians today who are not homophobic, and who are actually even gay themselves, or very gay affirming, proves that it's not just because of Christianity, that it was a product of the times. Um, so it's not simple enough to say that that it's because the church was controlling everything. I don't think the church was technically controlling everything. I think it's more that back in 1890, the majority of people were Christians who were of the belief that gays should not be, that homosexuality shouldn't be publicly expressed. Um, and so I guess the more accurate thing to reply with might be that back in 1890 the majority of people in Great Britain were homophobes, and therefore the church was also homophobic by extension. I think that's a more accurate reflection on how culture has changed. Whether or not that will alienate people, I think is... Like, in my head, I'm thinking, what is more likely to make people interested in Christianity? What is the most likely thing I can do and say to sort of maybe make people hate it less? Maybe help people to see it a little more clearly? And I don't know the answer to that question in this case, but I sort of feel like I should say something. But then even that thought of I should say something, is it rational? Because, the thought I've had in my head is, okay, when I talk to atheists, and I say to them, okay, what have you got against Christianity? They'll say things like, oh, the pedophilia things, and the war things, and the homophobia things, and, I listen to them, and I sort of believe them, but in my head I'm kind of thinking, so you're saying that had Christianity been absolutely peaceful from its inception, had had Christianity never had a single pedophile in it, both of which, by the way, are historically impossible. It is literally impossible in human history to have no involvement with either, regardless of what your organization is. If it's been around for long enough and it's got more than 10 people in it, you're probably going to have some sort of conflict and some kind of sexual deviant in it. It's an inevitability. But and also, yeah, bigots. No matter what group you have, you're not going to be able to avoid having a bigot involved. In sooner or later, it's going to happen to you. But okay, it sounds like I'm trying to be an apologist for these things, and I'm not. These things are quite rightly condemned. And I think that the church probably should have done a lot more to condemn these things sooner and to not be involved. But, setting that aside, right? Had Christianity been absolutely pure and clean for the entire time it's existed, would these people just by default become Christians? And the truth is they probably wouldn't. The more likely possibility is that they would be like, yeah, no, I'd still rather be an atheist. Like, okay, not always, but I think the majority would still, because belief, like, Christianity is really a statement of belief. The reason I can keep being a Christian, even though all of these things happened, is because I know that all of those things have nothing to do with whether or not Christianity is the truth, with a capital T, and therefore it doesn't make a difference to me whether or not these things happened. Not because I don't care. I care about these things very much, perhaps more than a non-Christian would, precisely because not only does it reflect so poorly on what I believe in, but also because the beliefs I have inform me about how wrong things like senseless wars and pedophilia and homophobia and all kinds of other bigotry really are. So, ultimately, I do feel a need to reply. Like, I don't know how people are going to respond, and I don't know, uh, you know, what, I'm just gonna go do it, and I'll come back later and talk about what happened if it's interesting.